Okay, I think we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you again for being here. Today we have a pretty full agenda for you. I'm really pleased to have three panelists join us today, and I'll be introducing them to you momentarily. We'll be having a bit of an introduction to the DLC and our QPLs, and then we will have Lynn, Michael, and Nick speak to you about their topics. And at 2:50 p.m. we will be having time for Q&A, and we can stay about 5 minutes longer if you'd like to ask us questions some more. If we don't get to everyone's questions, we will be answering them by email, so please feel free to get those in. Before I get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to post these slides, and we're going to post the recording on our website, so you'll be able to go back and forth and share the webinar with your colleagues and your friends, so don't worry about that. We are going to mute everyone on the webinar today, and we're going to keep it this way for the entire webinar. So of course, we do want to hear from you during the webinar. We'd like you to be able to ask our panelists questions. And so to do that, you will see at the top right corner, there's a speech bubble with a question mark in it. That is our question pane. Please use that question pane to ask questions to the panelists. That is distinct from the chat pane. We won't be using the chat pane at all during this webinar, so please just confine your questions to the question pane, and we'll be answering them at the end of the presentation. So thank you very much. Of course, if you've got questions where you can't hear us or some technical difficulty, my colleague Lauren will be helping you answer those questions. And then for those of you that are joining us for the very first time and aren't familiar with the DLC, we are an independent nonprofit organization. We provide decision makers with data and tools in order to reduce energy, limit light pollution, and reduce carbon emissions. So thank you again for being here. These are our esteemed panelists. I'm very happy to have them join us. We're going to hear first from Lynn Meng. Lynn is a professor at Vanderbilt University, and she'll be sharing her work on artificial light at night and phenology and pollen. Then we'll hear from Michael Davidson, who's with Synapse Wireless. He's going to speak to us about NLCs and some of the technical details you need to be aware of to save energy and reduce light pollution. And finally, Nick Messler is with Avari Consulting, and he's going to be sharing some of his very broad work on using geospatial modeling and photometrics to help cities install better lighting and save energy and limit light pollution. All right, so a couple more slides from me, and then we'll hand it over to Lynn. And so in order to reduce energy and reduce light pollution, we can think of having two ingredients in our recipe box, and those are our lighting systems and our control systems. And so not only do we need to have the right light, and that is light that does not emit light directly into the sky where it's wasted. We want to make sure the lighting is energy efficient, but we also want to use controls to apply the light at the right time. If we are lighting empty parking lots, if we are lighting empty streets, if we're wasting our resources where there's no people present, then we are not being effective with our lighting systems. And so only by using those two in concert will we save energy and reduce light pollution. And so part of selecting responsible outdoor lighting to minimize light pollution is to also consider lighting that is energy efficient and supports human visual performance. Lighting, of course, is for people. We are the organisms that need light. Arguably, other organisms in the ecosystem would do well without it, and so we want to make sure that that light is effective for people. And so one way you can look at responsible outdoor lighting is to use the Luna QPL, and this is just an example of a product that's listed on the Luna QPL today, and it provides you not only with performance details about the lighting system, in this case, color temperature, light output, and power demand. It also shows you tested data for tested products. So here you can see tested CCT or color temperature, color rendition metrics, and bug ratings or spatial distribution metrics, as well as some unique features such as its spatial distribution and its spectral distribution. Of course, in order to save energy and reduce lighting when there's no one present, we also want to have lighting controls. And so understanding how the lighting control system works and what your options are is also something we care about at the DLC. And so the controls options tables that will be shown on the SSL QPL as part of SSL version 6 and Luna version 2 will let you save more energy and further reduce light pollution. And here you'll see driver information, how the dimming works and what the minimum dimming level is, information about integral controllers or sensors, and finally, if the product has an NLC listed system associated with those luminaires, what it is, and a direct link to those systems on the NLC QPL. I don't have time to show how to use the QPLs today, but if you're interested in that, that's something I can show you later on. You'll also find some information about that at the DLC, and we can provide some links to that. And with that, I will turn it over to Lynn to start talking about the impacts of light pollution.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Lin Meng. I'm an urban ecologist at Vanderbilt University. I'm really excited to be here and share some of our research on artificial light and urban sustainability. While all of us are familiar with light pollution and its impact on night sky, I'd like to highlight a dimension that remains less visible: how artificial light changes the biology of urban trees. Beyond sky glow and visibility, pollen disrupt the seasonal light cues that trees depend on, and setting off changes that cascade through urban ecosystem and even affect public health. So our work really centered on a simple but far-reaching question: what happens to urban trees and ultimately to us when city light makes the night no longer truly night? So across the world, night sky in cities are getting brighter by around 10% per year because we have rapid urbanization and there's widespread adoption of LED lighting. And this is a satellite map showing how light pollution has intensified over decades. And plants and animals evolved under a predictable cycle of day and night. Even small amount of artificial light that humans do not notice can disrupt the biological rhythm. And this is really new frontier because these light conditions influence everything in urban ecosystem. So understanding light pollution impact is really essential for managing urban ecosystem, public health, and long-term sustainability. Trees do not have watches or calendars, but they seem to know when spring arrives better than we do. This seasonal biological event, such as when trees leaf out, produce flowers, or when their leaves turn yellow or fall, are called plant phenology. Plant phenology really rely on two environmental cues: temperature and day length. With days getting warmer from winter to spring and days getting longer, that's a signal for trees to break dormancy and start to grow. And when days get colder and get shorter, tree will their leaf change color and leaf fall. However, both temperature and light signal got altered in cities. We have urban heat island effect. This urban heat makes cities warmer. We have light pollutions. Artificial light make night brighter. Together, these two urban features completely reshape this natural signal that plants depend on. So in our early work, the core research question that we ask is whether artificial light affect plant phenology. So what we did is we look at this urban-rural gradient. From rural to urban, there is an increase in temperature. There's an increase in light pollutions. So what we expect is the timing of spring leaf up will shift it earlier towards cities. To test that, we use this high resolution artificial light satellite product, NASA's Black Marble. So this data set really gave us a global maps of light intensity at the daily time step. We overlay this artificial light maps with a phenology observation from a citizen science program called Nature's Notebook, organized by USA National Phenology Network. So those data are collected by citizen scientists. They observe phenology in their backyard or neighborhood, and they upload the data through this online platform. And we have thousands of observations during the past decades for a lot of species. So this data set really allow us to test this broader light pollution impact at the national level. What we did is we classify all the phenology observation into two categories: the site with light pollution and site without light pollution. And we look at this spring phenology date, breaking leaf buds across a temperature gradient for these two groups. What we found is the site with artificial light show on average 9 days earlier in terms of phenology. And this is a really significant change. Then we build, based on this relationship of temperature, artificial light, and phenology, we build a linear mix model, and we predict what the spring phenology looks like by the year 2100 under climate change and different light pollution scenarios. And we found this 1% increase of artificial light per year will lead to 7 days earlier in spring phenology compared to a constant artificial light scenarios. And that counts towards 40% of climate warming effect. So this really means that artificial light is a significant driver of plant growth cycle. Built on these national level studies, we scale up to a global level studies, and we look at more than 400 cities in northern hemispheres to compare the strength of light pollution's impact versus the strength of temperature impact on phenology. On average, from rural to urban, we found this spatial pattern of artificial light there is an exponential increase of light pollution from rural to urban. So there's really high artificial light in urban core, but very low at suburban and rural. But for temperature, there's a rapid increase from rural to suburb, but it's kind of flattened out towards urban centers. And the spring phenology, start of growing season, constantly shifted earlier from rural to urban. So this indicates that from rural to suburb, it's mainly the temperature that drives changes in phenology. But from suburb to urban is the artificial light that drives the changes in phenology. And we compare the strengths of temperature and artificial light. We found artificial light has a stronger impact on plant phenology, especially on autumn phenology, the end of growing season, compared to temperature effect. And this is very surprising. This is an important shift in our understanding in urban ecology. It means that managing heat alone is not enough. Artificial light is a major ecological force. Not all trees respond the same. So we conduct this new project this fall. We conducted weekly field measurement of phenology of there's 30 tree species. at Vanderbilt campus, we want to understand what's the species-specific pattern response to pollen. So for each tree pair, we have a tree right next to a street light, and we have the same species of tree, same size, same house conditions, and the dark. And we found there's a very different species-specific response. For example, this hornbeam, this one under street light show a delayed leaf fall. So the paired one under dark has leaf fall earlier and lowers the amount of conductance. But for the other species, Lorandandron, this individual that right next to the street light shows earlier leaf fall and increased the amount of conductance. So this indicates that we cannot assume all urban trees will respond to light pollution the same way. And managing city forests will really require a species level understanding. To understand whether there is a critical threshold of pollen that trigger plant phenology, we conducted this greenhouse experiment. We exposed light like this species under different colors of light or different intensities of light. And we observed the timing of spring leaf out. We found the individual that under white high intensity light showed the earliest leaf up. And there's almost 20-day difference compared to control. So that's almost 3 weeks earlier shift. The ecological effect of light pollution do not stop at trees. If tree leaf out earlier and produce flowers earlier in the spring, tree may produce pollen earlier and affect pollen allergy season. So we use this pollen station data and overlaid with artificial light map to understand how artificial light will affect pollen season and pollen exposure risk. We found under artificial light, pollen season will start earlier and last longer, and the pollen concentration will increase. So that indicates there's a higher exposure severity level during the pollen season. So this indicates that artificial light may be a direct contributor to this worsening allergy symptoms. The good news is many cities already recognize light pollution as a concern, and they come up with policies to mitigate light pollution. We look at light pollution effect in New York City and Washington, D.C. before and after they implement this light pollution mitigation policy, and compare their actual light against their neighbor city, Newark and Philadelphia. We found these cities with artificial light policy show reduced pollen over years, while their neighbor cities without policy show increasing pollen over years. And city with policy show there's a reduced impact on plant phenology over years. So this result indicate that targeted lighting policy is an effective mitigation tool. To conclude, we found artificial light alters tree growth cycle and extend the pollen season. This means there's increased pollen allergy risk for humans, and there's altered urban ecosystem functions. There's altered carbon cycle, water use, and energy balance. Light pollution can be managed through thoughtful lighting design and policy towards a more sustainable and healthy cities. I want to end with a poem, Artificial Rhythm, written by Sam Illingworth. This poem is inspired by our 2022 paper that for the first time show artificial light affect plant phenology at the national scale. Cities need light. Cities need light, of course, but they also need darkness. So a sustainable urban future really require balancing safety and visibility with ecological and health consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn, for that excellent, excellent presentation and new knowledge. I'm really amazed at all the impacts that light has on us and our fellow species. So thank you for your work, and we're going to turn it over to Michael. And Michael's going to talk to us about network lighting control systems. So Michael, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Davidson with Synapse Wireless, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about network lighting controls. And my primary goal is to share, some of the experience that you'll be able to see how controls can add real value to a dark sky project and prevent light pollution. Also, I'll show you that without lighting controls, it's going to be very difficult to have confidence in your lights behaving as you design them to behave, and also know the impact of what's going on. Let's see here.
I think somehow we didn't, we lost control, but you should have it again now.
Okay, there we go. I got a little button in front of me. Let me see if I can. Here we go.
Let's see, does that help?
That helps. Yep, got it. So the key is, we have to adapt to the ever-changing needs. And it's critical that each zone that we set up has its own characteristics. And for instance, if we deliver, 50 lights to a campus, you can't have all the lights with the same high-end trim with the same capabilities. Some of them need less light, some of them need more light. Some of them need different schedules. So just throwing a bunch of lights out on a parking lot, out in a park, and even in a stadium, you're not delivering a solution that you need if you don't use network lighting controls. So one size doesn't fit all. Each light has to be in its zone and have its own characteristics. So once you get the light set up, there's things you need to think about. Do you have the right light for the environment? Are you putting too much light on the ground, too much light out around the surroundings? Also, think about is schedules. You have to have adaptive schedules. There's different things you need to think about. As seasons change, migrations change, animals are doing different things. You got sea turtles have mating season. You got different plants that need different light at different times. So if we're just flooding the lights, what I call a light bomb, it's not going to be good for the environment. You want to keep your lights running, so it's really important to have power monitoring diagnostics to know the health of those lights. Are all the lights working, or some of them working, or some of them half working? The key is, do you have those lights working as you think they were designed for and as you want them to operate? NLC persistence is another level of protection. We'll talk about that in a second. And the key is, if you have multiple sites, you don't want to be running around changing the schedules on site. You really want to do it remotely. So some kind of cloud capabilities is really critical if you really want to have good control and change for seasons, holidays, and different events. Also, you still want to know if you've got good light if it's not good light, you know, if you got half the LEDs on, all the LEDs on, or if a light fails, all of a sudden it's on full. And you defeated all your schedules and all the things you designed if the light starts failing and you can't respond to it or can't figure it out. So there's key things about, you know, validating your operation. It's what's the health of the light? Are you getting notifications the light's failed? Multiple users might need to go and adjust different areas, different, you know, things. So it's key to be able to monitor and control those lights remotely. Also, scenes and schedules need to change. So how can you do that? So some examples are parking lots, roadways, you know, sports. We've seen in the past when they just had a switch turn on and off, somebody might turn that whole field on, you know, at dusk and leave it on most of the night. So it's kind of nice if you have a schedule, you can have some way to monitor your lights and provide energy savings as well. So when you throw in occupancy now, you can worry about, is somebody there? Do those lights need to be on at a crosswalk? Or can they dim when it's late at night? Here's just kind of an idea of you've got schedules, scenes, or controlling zones, and you have a lighting controller on each one of those. So here's what it kind of looks like, and you can change the percent of light, you can change behaviors, you can fade, you can even change color, you know, from very bright light to very soft light, and anything anywhere in between there. Maybe in some cities you might want to give different light to the trees that will provide better, you know, growth of those trees and photosynthesis. So also you can have dynamic effects with those lights. Here's just some examples of adjusting lights with different times of the day or different events. We won't go through all these, you know, in great detail, but the light levels are really important. If you need light, you have it for safety, for, you know, seeing, you know, for sporting events. But as people clear out, you know, dim those lights down to appropriate level. Also, with motion, you can light up intersections or dim intersections depending on if somebody's around or cars around. But especially when you have parks and walking trails and running trails, it's important to give light for people can see and for safety. But also, if there's nobody there, let's turn those lights down. You're going to save energy and you're going to minimize disruption of wildlife. So some key benefits. Energy savings is always good, but it's always nice to know if you are you really getting the energy savings? Those lights really going on and off? Many times if we're out debugging, first thing we're going to do is look at the power monitoring. And if we have a 100-watt light, we want to see 100 watts if it's on 100%, 50 watts is 50%. So if you have some way to monitor the power, it's just essential to know the light is working, you're putting that right amount of light out. Something that happens when you lose control of the lights, so either the gateway goes away, the LED driver might fail, or the LEDs might be failing. They're going to go short circuit. And when they go short circuit, they're all going to turn on really bright. So all those things could happen, but you can monitor that with the capability of having power monitoring, especially remote monitoring, where you can look at a whole site and compare from month to month what you should be seeing. And that's the way you can identify problems. Then also another key benefit of the NLC is you can monitor the state and health through reports, through email alerts, if lights are going down, if LED drivers are failing. And also you can go to even deeper level of that with D4I, is it has diagnostics. They'll tell you what kind of problem you're having with your LED arrays, or if you're having problems with the LED driver. And there's different problems. There's over temperature, under temperature, over voltage, under voltage. A lot of these things you'll see if you have a D4i, connection to it. Here's just an example. You can, using our system and other systems do this as well, as you can see the light, see the status of them, and if there's a problem, if you need attention, these little bubbles will turn red. It'll identify a problem with either you've got too much power or not enough power to that light, and there's some reason for that. There's some issue that you'll need to correct. Whoops, we went.
You went really far.
Yeah, let's see if we can get back there.
Okay.
It's like I don't have control here.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, let me see if I can help you out.
All right.
Sorry, folks. I don't know what happened here. How we went forward. Okay.
It was a giant leap for mankind.
Sorry, you can see a little bit of a sneak preview of next slides. Okay, I think you were right here.
All righty.
Should have control.
Okay, yep. So we mentioned D4i. It's built into the LED drivers, improves information on, what kind of driver you have in there, who makes the driver. With the asset data, you can know for your luminaires, your CCT, your CRI, your wattage, part number. And it's really instrumental if, for instance, you put some lights on a lot, put lights on a park. 3 years from now, who has the record of exactly what that light is? So it's all built into the luminaire with memory banks, the D4i. You could go look that up, replace it with the exact light, get that ordered just right. And even if it's not built anymore, it's end of life, you have all the data where somebody can create that luminaire for you. So you know exactly what you need for even the color for the case, and even CCT, you just name it, the wattage, you can match that up down the road. Also, there's customer defined info. If this is, for instance, your turtle light, or if it's for the desert, if it's for a loading dock, you have that information built into the driver because you programmed it in. So it's key to be able to have, information to replace the assets, to get the right light. An extra level of insurance is LLC persistence. If the gateway loses power after 15 minutes, the lights will use daylight or dark to function. So not all's lost. And lots of times, previous generations, all the lights would come on bright if the gateway had a blip. So with persistence control, lights can go to 80% with motion or lower or higher. And shortly after presence is no longer detected, lights are going to go back to 30% or 20%. So when the gateway comes back, now it returns to all the schedules you have programmed, and you're in good shape. So it's nice to have this extra layer of protection against light bombs. Just all of a sudden, everything brightly, lit up. Just a quick look at, what it looks like for a Zaga socket for a controller that's DC. With DC, there's some advantages. You have fewer components, fewer failures with some of the analog parts. So when you have less parts, most of this, all these components are redundant. A lot of them are in the D4i LED driver, or a 0 to 10 LED driver with aux voltage. So you're eliminating components, you're having a more reliable system, but also with the driver, you have power diagnostics. Both power and diagnostics will allow you to understand exactly what's going on with the lights and if they're operating properly. Some just something that's really nice is if you can deploy multiple locations on a site, now you can make adjustments. You know, West Coast wildlife and plants and trees are totally different than the East Coast. You know, things up in, you know, Canada are different than they are in Florida. So you can make those adjustments remotely. You can have multiple locations, multiple gateways, and scale is key. And lots of times, you know, some of these customers will, due to budget, can only deploy, you know, part of the project. Like a city might deploy, you know, 10 or 15 streets, then start just adding more streets, more parks as time goes on. So being able to scale is important, and it allows you to build with confidence, you know, multiple sites and build in schedules for seasons, you know, fall, winter, summer, and spring. So just to summarize, you know, dark sky benefits really can benefit from network lighting controls. You know, powered by smart lighting controls, you get the right amount of light, the right place, and the right time. Also, you can, you know, prove compliance to codes, energy codes for different municipalities. You can protect wildlife, protect human health. And it's interesting is we got smartphones, we got smart cars, we got smart toaster ovens, we have, you know, smart TVs. You got all these smart devices that do all kinds of stuff. You got Alexa who can turn your lights on and off. But most of our lights we have today are not smart. And so it's a little bit extra cost. It's reasonable. It's easy to do. It's just we need to take that extra step. We need to invest in better lights and lights that are designed to last a longer time than just a few years. You know, with LEDs, DC components, it can be a long-term solution. So with NLCs, it's going to move the needle in your designs and give you the ability to sleep at night and know the lights are not glaring and causing interruptions with migration patterns or with the plants. And thank you very much. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your deep expertise and your forward-looking perspective on what NLCs can do in the future. And I couldn't have imagined a better setup for Nick than that introduction. So Nick is going to talk to us about reducing impacts on a citywide scale. And Nick, the floor is yours. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leora. Thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar today. Leora, DLC, for having me, presenting alongside some really great speakers, Lynn and Michael. Lynn, I'll go as far to say that this is the most important body of work since Silent Spring was released back in the 60s, so it's very exciting to be here today. Today we've talked about a number of things already. We've talked about the impacts of light pollution from outdoor lighting sources and the contents of messing with Mother Nature. We've talked about controls solving this problem and what some of the underlying technology looks like and some of the language that's used and the lingo underlying it all. And now we're here to talk about some simple ways to connect the dots of technology, the natural built environments, lots and lots of data, things that we have access to that will create a lasting impact via controls, and specifically for streetlights. The work that I do at Avari, we're all about streetlights. If you're not familiar with me, we specialize in street lighting, digital twins, streetlight master planning to solve very complex problems about our street lighting and provide greater value from that asset class in a way that meets all these different needs. Because truthfully, we provide lighting for a whole host of different reasons. There's a lot of benefit that's given to us. It solves a lot of problems. And with the ability to integrate with controls, matching that against digital twin applications, which is now available out on the market. There's the ability to fine-tune our streetlight systems in a way that solve different problems and mitigate the negatives of a bad lighting design. So, as we know, there's many obvious benefits to street lighting. Why do we provide street lighting in the first place? Obviously, to see improves visibility. There's a feeling of security and ambiance that it gives. In cities across the United States, across the world, street lighting is in many cases put those cities on the map. It gives a feeling of community pride and supports the nighttime economy and gets people out walking around at night instead of being shuttered indoors, which brings a lot of value. But, obviously, there's the downsides to lighting. There's the social hazards, the environmental impact, whether it's light pollution like trespass or disruption of flora and fauna's actinic curves, or disruptions to bird migration. All these things that we now know of and we're able to better quantify in a way that I don't think we were in the past. There's plenty of numbers out there now on what street lighting can do to save lives in car crashes. We know we can reduce car crashes by 42%, pedestrian-involved collisions at intersections. Then as a dollar value, there's a benefit, there's a quantifiable benefit to it. It's been harder to evaluate for things like bird migration. What disruption do we have there? We know now that light pollution is responsible for killing 1 billion birds with a B, 1 billion birds annually in the United States alone. Street lighting obviously plays a role in that. It represents 12 to 15% of our light pollution, and it's something that, knowing that we can quantify better, we start to mitigate and understand how these two things interact. Now that we have all this data and an ability to make an impact. But knowing that we have these obvious benefits, we have things that street lighting does a whole lot of good for. It's also the negative consequences, and finding where we can achieve this balance by evaluating these different competing needs, and all the while maintaining sustainability and an approach that is long-lasting and something that extends beyond individual decisions, something that we can bring that's wholesale, making changes for us, and the system is benefiting us rather than requiring individual decisions to be made on a street-to-street basis, for example. So, the technology that we've developed here at Avari to understand this better is developing digital twins that allow us to evaluate all these different things. Where is light falling across our system? Rather than applying a broad, simplistic version of lighting design that may mirror something along the lines of a templated lighting design. We're going to light every collector roadway the same, every local intersection the same, every pathway the same, regardless of what its underlying needs are, and the unique geometry and design of any given roadway. And generally in cities, you might see a wide variety of different lighting applications and designs that aren't necessarily all one-to-one. And our work is to identify where the issue points are and identify where the gaps in lighting are, what the needs are, matching the lighting design to that, and then making improvements from there. The work that we do is intended to evaluate this on a broad scale. It allows us to look at tens of thousands of lights all at once, help cities better understand how can the illumination that's presently being provided from streetlights in terms of photometrics better answer these different issues and problems, such that we're getting more juice squeezed from that asset effectively. Now, what do I mean by that? It's more specific details. Is most of the lighting design that's been done historically has asked a lot about where do we provide street lighting, or how do we provide street lighting? Do I put a street light here? Do I put a street light there? Do I need street lighting at this intersection? And if so, how much lighting do we need? What's appropriate for this location? We do very little talking about this on a temporal basis. We don't talk a lot about when we need lighting. There's obviously different periods of the day. We have just after working hours. Here where I live in Portland, Oregon, the sun sets at about 4:30 this evening. At the very beginning of rush hour traffic, it's going to be dark. In the summertime, we see something very different. The sun sets closer to 10 o'clock at night. Just after the dusk period, most people, particularly during the weekday, have gone to bed. If you have quieter residential communities, you don't see necessarily the same level of activity that you might in a commercial district. And that varies across different times of the year as well. There's still plenty of activity in a commercial district in the earlier evening hours, 6 and 7 p.m., than there is 11, 12 o'clock at night. But importantly, the lighting design criteria that's been presented to us by organizations like the IAS specifically, and things like the ARC-8 manual, identify very different lighting design criteria based on the relative amount of pedestrian activity. And we can see that there's a potential for a reduction of upwards of 50% of the illumination being provided at any one location. And designing a system with this in mind, knowing that we might need more light during certain times of day and less at others, enables us to start making more informed decisions about what's an appropriate amount of light to provide and how to start providing that. And in addition to that, looking at specific areas of concern. And we have an example here. We have this crosswalk here, and you can see is kind of typical illumination photometric output pattern. It's where light is falling on the ground from the street lights. We have this yellow crosswalk here. This is evidently in the state of California yellow crosswalk. Identifies as a school nearby. There's an elementary school just up the block from here. And we can see pretty quickly that there is not a significant amount of illumination being provided at this crosswalk, and it's otherwise shrouded in darkness, and could even potentially creating a lot of negative contrast, creating an environment where you might have a silhouette effect, not able to see pedestrians in the crosswalk efficiently. Digital twins allow us to identify where these are. It's inherently geographic solution, evaluating where the street lighting is, how much illumination is reaching the ground at any given location, and then comparing that to other data. There's more data available to us now than ever. Data is the new oil. There's lots of information, cities and counties, big and small, provided about what the nature of the natural and built environment is, where we have different asset classes, and how we can start recommending what a quality lighting design looks like across all these different applications. But in addition to that, where some of the drawbacks might be. And we see an example here, you can see on the top right of the screen. This is in the state of California. The shaded region is burrowing owl habitat, which are an animal species that are endangered and very much affected by light pollution. You see these streetlights here, and you can see the impact zone of those streetlights. Now, this is just one kind of small scale example where we can see street lighting impacting the area of where these animals habitate. This is a otherwise kind of quiet commercial district with not a lot of activity at night. It doesn't necessarily need this level of continuous illumination throughout this area of the city. This is in San Jose, California. Simple recommendation here might be to turn these off at a certain time period or remove them altogether. But knowing where this is relative to other data sets, in this case, endangered species habitat, allows us to start answering some of these questions about how our lighting should be designed in its specific environment, looking at each streetlight on its own. But beyond that, this is kind of basics. If you've heard me talk, you've probably seen those slides before too. But now we're moving into a more sophisticated way of making these decisions and allowing the technology to do the work for us, giving it some kind of general guidance about what we want our lighting to look like, and make those systems truly smart. We're seeing a lot of similar examples to this in other asset classes. For example, City of Los Angeles just announced, I believe a week or two ago, that finally all 4,000 of their traffic signals are on a centralized control system that allows a traffic engineer to make a real-time decision about what the timing of that traffic signal should be across their entire system, and get real insights and data to how that intersection is performing and speed up traffic wherever it's needed. Make that intervention in a real-time basis with quality data coming in. 4,000 streetlights or traffic lights, it's a lot of data. There's no reason we can't do the same thing with our streetlight systems. Understand how that data coming in is relative to the performance of each individual fixture, and what an appropriate response should be relative to things happening in our environment. And that could look like a myriad of different applications, which we're here to talk about today. I like to think of this very similarly as the thermostat in your house. For example, you might have a particular temperature that you like for the middle of the day versus in the middle of the night, or when you're active walking around your house. If you work from home, if you don't work from home, the preference for different temperatures is going to look very different. Similarly, you have other external factors that influence what the thermostat does for you. For example, if it's a warm day here where I am in Portland, it's actually pretty warm. It's 60 degrees. My thermostat doesn't need to do anything. It's warm enough in the house that the external factors that are putting pressure on that system don't need to change the heater or the air conditioner in a house to do what it is I've asked it to do, and it's provide the right amount of temperature for different times of the day. The same could be applied to a street lighting system, where you have a preference for how much light is, which may be the recommended practice, the standards, how much light is appropriate for this location and at different times. And then also have other external factors that are influencing what's appropriate for that location. This is something that has now been achieved by a product that's called Photometrics AI. It's not a Vari consulting product. I very much recommend, if you're interested in this, go to photometrics.ai. That is the website address. It allows you to take these different competing elements of the built environment and what the recommended practices for appropriate lighting, consolidate all this information and make a decision about what's appropriate for each location. And in effect, what that looks like is we know what the appropriate amount of light is to put in the roadway, in the sidewalk, and then in private property, or what we've otherwise called light trespass. There's quantifiable different amounts of light that are appropriate for all these different locations. Now, any given streetlight could meet that criteria sufficiently with what's been installed, but more than often, you have unique circumstances. If a light is put a few feet back, or it's oriented differently, or you have an unusual intersection or curve in a roadway, such as the example here, it may not be the most appropriate circumstance that you're at the full output. So effectively, knowing what the appropriate dimming level is to meet this criteria most effectively allows us to, one, meet the recommended practice without overlighting, wasting energy, impacting the environment, and contributing more to light pollution. We're able to mitigate all those negative factors while maintaining an appropriate amount of lighting levels. What this looks like in practice is it allows us to tap into other APIs, other connected systems, things that we have data on that's actively monitoring different elements of the natural and built environment. Tap that into our network lighting control, start making decisions on that environment. Now, one example of that might be in terms of traffic safety. We have an example image here. This is a look into a traffic control center, monitoring cameras of many thousands of different intersections. So you can see on the left side of the slide here. What this allows us to do, if there's a car crash or some sort of event that's taken place and it's been determined that we want to brighten an intersection for that period of time, we don't presently have an effective way of doing that doesn't require someone who's a specialist in network lighting control and has access to that platform to then make that decision. We need more light at this location. Maybe it's in the middle of the night, we've dimmed down our street lights, but for this short period of time while we have on-scene responders, we want to brighten up the lights. Via APIs and connecting control systems to other sensors allows us to make those decisions better. Other instances of that may be things as crime threats, or if there's a active police presence. Similarly, knowing that there is a need for more lighting, if you have people that, if you have police presence is looking for someone, or if there's an unsafe circumstance and you want people to be able to get away from a shooting, for example, allowing the lighting to be indicative of that need for that time is important. If we've decided to dim down the lights because we didn't need it in normal circumstances, we're not making the most of that benefit of having street lighting for that time when we do need it. So integrating our controls with other data systems is the key to achieving that. Similar things such as that are things like planned and unplanned events. For example, if you might have a parade route, and knowing that the parade route is going to be late at night, we might want more light for that specific circumstance. Or just a couple months ago, we had Halloween. We might want more light in our neighborhoods at night where we otherwise might not on any other given day of the year. Or for example, in the instance you have an emergency evacuation, hurricanes, other unplanned events where you need to get a large amount of people out of the city. We might need brighter lights during that specific time period that we might not otherwise. Be able to tap that information into a decision platform that's looking at the evacuation routes as an example, and connecting the dots on what's available to us is the means of achieving different outcomes such as this. But at present, we really only have the ability to set very rigid dimming profiles where we might want slightly less, say 50% during these hours, 75% these hours, but not so in a way that's data driven, is what you can now achieve with products such as Photometrics AI.
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
We're almost at 3. Do you think you could wrap up in 1 minute?
Sure can. The last thing I'll want to mention here on this same topic is in the context of the environment, is evaluating things like bird migration. There are, you can get alerts from a great organization that's run by Cornell Labs at birdcast.info. It gives you an automated alert during the fall and spring when you have significant bird migration coming through your neighborhood. And knowing this, you could tap that same API into your control system to make a decision that we need less light for this specific time period. We don't necessarily need to light every day of the year for this event, but during the short period of the night or seasonal periods where this is identified as a more important outcome and a priority of the community to evaluate this need, now have the ability to make those connections by integrating this data that's been provided into our APIs. As an example, this is something that's now available to us. That said, I'm going to skip ahead here, knowing that we're out of time, and happy to take any questions following this presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. I wish we had more time, but thank you for your amazing expertise. I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions. Hopefully, Lynn is still able to answer some, but let's get to those. Okay. Oh, good. All right. Let's see. Lynn, I'm going to ask you this first one. Would evergreen trees be similarly affected by Allen or, no Allen dark scenarios?
This is a really good question. So the short answer is we don't know yet, because there's Allen impact on tree growth cycle is highly understudied. So there's very few studies on this. And our earlier work look at this landscape or national level, so it's aggregated signal. We haven't really disentangled, deciduous forest versus evergreen forest. But we do expect there will be a different response because evergreen forests, they don't lose leaves in winter, but they do have a slower gradual turnover of their old leaves and new leaves on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So they may get affected by Allen, but at a smaller magnitude. But this is a really good question to study in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's a question here that I'm not sure is for you, but let me ask it just in case. It says, I think this might have been in the context of your outdoor field studies. Did you look at HPS lighting compared to LED lighting, or were you just looking at that color of light only? That might have also been in the greenhouse context.
Yes. So for our field work, we did differentiate different types of light. We don't have HPS lighting on our campus, but we have some warm LED and cold LED. So we do measure the light intensity for different spectrum, and that will, and we expect to see they will affect tree phenology differently. But we are analyzing the data right now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. That was helpful. All right, we have couple of, let's see, I have one more question for you, Lynn, and then I'm going to skip to the next presenters. So with regards to plant phenology, do you know if color rendition plays a role? The question is there less effect on plants with, say, metal halide fixture and low pressure sodium fixtures that have low color rendition, so don't have a broad band spectrum, for example?
This is also a good question. So for trees, is really the ratio of red versus far red that will trigger a photoreceptor pathway and alter phenology. And also blue-rich light will trigger another photoreceptor pathway. So the spectral composition do make a difference, and they will affect phenology differently. So some will affect fall phenology more, like when leaves change color or leaf fall. Others may affect spring phenology more when tree grow up new leaves.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Michael some questions here. Let's start with this one. Michael, do you have a solution for unmetered street lighting?
Yes, we most NLC companies have either 0 to 10, which doesn't have power metering unless you have a power metering chip like on a twist lock. So there are solutions, but they're not that much cheaper. So getting the power monitoring is about 10% more, and it's mainly the cost of the LED driver. So we have both.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's see. I'm going to ask Nick one. This one says, we would love to implement something like what you're talking about, but the biggest issue is our utility, which is not crediting us for energy reductions on street lighting if the street lights are not metered. It would be cost prohibitive for us to meter thousands of street lights. Any solutions to this roadblock would be helpful.
Yeah, that's always $1 million question. leading every presentation I do with the smaller groups, I ask, why do we provide street lighting? You often hear traffic safety, personal safety, but I asked that same question at a utility conference, and the answer I got was to make money. Utilities are quasi-monopolies, and they're limited in the ways they're allowed to make money, but street lighting is one of them, and so it's a great avenue for them. In addition to that, you're not really paying for the energy when it comes to street lighting. You're paying for the amortized cost of the greater system, all of the equipment and electrical power delivery to power that system. That's the majority of the cost. So, reducing the watts of kilowatt hours of energy that's being used for illumination, from their perspective, doesn't have that same impact. My belief is, though, that there's no reason it can't be negotiated, that there is some level of impact. If you have a dolly driver, or you have a compliant driver in your streetlight, that's a utility grade meter in itself. And if we have a consistent monitoring platform that's looking at how much dimming was used at any given light across an entire system, you know very well how much electricity is being used, and that's something that can be reported. So while that may be a general policy, I have to imagine that there's a happy medium across all utilities and customers where that is achievable. Some states have been successful at allowing this to be done wholesale. I know states like Colorado, Vermont, New York, I believe, is another one where you're allowed to do this by right. So ultimately, I believe the political pressure is the key, and just kind of forcing them to come to the table to negotiate something that works for both parties. Because if it's advantageous to them in some way, why wouldn't they?
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for that nuanced answer. All right, I've got a couple more. This is somewhat of a in the weeds question, Michael, for you. Does D4i come in 12 volts DC?
Only 24 volts. The spec outlines just 24 volts, not 12.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I think we're almost through them all. One more. I think this might be a question for both Michael and Nick. You might both want to chime in on this one. Are vehicle speeds a consideration for the ability for streetlights to increase light for approaching vehicles? So I think this has to do with latency of response.
I'm yet to see a vehicle monitoring sensor that does what it's promised to do. I know they've piloted it in a number of places, and they get mixed results. I think generally speed does impact it, but does the sensor work as well as we'd like? I don't think so, or at least not yet.
And I agree. There's a lot more work to be done if you use PIR sensors. If you go, regular speed, or go through a parking lot, it'll pick you up. If you go too fast, it'll turn on by the time you're gone. I really emphasize, if the safety is really a concern on speed of vehicles, is use cameras, which you'll get a lot faster response, but it's a lot more expensive to use a camera to trigger the lights.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to our esteemed speakers for sharing their time and expertise with us today. We will have our slides and our video up. And if any new questions came in that we didn't have time for, we'll certainly send those to our speakers, and we will answer those questions offline. But happy holidays to all of you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nick, Lynn, and Michael again. And that is it for us. Take care, everyone, and hope you get to see some beneficial darkness.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.